You are listening to the Irish NFL Show, and we're looking ahead to the NFC East as part of our 2024-2025 early previews. We have done the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Eagles. We now roll around to the Commanders. And Noel, if you can predict what the Commanders are going to do this year, you're either Nostradamus or you're taking a complete flyer. There's so many new faces. It's top to bottom, just a completely different, never mind the team, it's a completely different organization. Which means there's a lot to talk about, but also means it's very hard to get a bead on them because there's really nothing you can compare to from last season. There's so little still left intact.
Yeah, no, look, but I think this is what the Commanders needed, off the field and on the field. They just needed a complete revamp. Things there just seem to be sledding downhill fairly quickly anytime you looked at them. And I like what they've done now. I think Dan Quinn is a solid head coach come in. He's an experienced head coach. He's obviously gone to a Super Bowl. It didn't finish off well for him, but he is experienced, and experience is kind of the word that I think when I think of them. They bring in a Bobby Wagner and Austin Eckler, Dante Fowler, Tyler Biadasz was mentioned earlier on. So I think they brought in good, solid players who can come in and work around what's going to be a rookie quarterback and give him a better chance to kind of settle in there. I actually think, I think they'll probably do a little bit better than last year. I just think it just feels a little more settled now. Obviously, we'll see it when the season starts, and we have Cliff Kingsbury there on offense, who again is a very experienced coach who has worked with similar type quarterbacks before. So he will run that offense there. I think he has some decent experienced players in there to kind of run it, and they've strengthened the defense as well. So, I think overall the Commanders are probably moving in the right direction, and I think they might be slightly better than they were last year. But again, I think they just want that madness to stop, and they just want to kind of have that settled feeling that they know who's there, what's happening. And yeah, overall, I just think the Commanders have got slightly better than they have done. And, if that kind of continues, then we'll see if it actually pays dividends on the field.
But I don't know if Dan Quinn was necessarily their first choice head coach, and it really doesn't seem like he was. And we saw the drama in the off season and what looked like a slightly botched handoff, if I can put it that way, for the guy they actually were targeting. But I think they may have backed into the right choice here ultimately. Like, Quinn seems to me, as Noel alluded to, there's that question mark over getting over the line, and there was certainly plenty of blame being thrown his way in Dallas. But he's a locker room guy. He's a culture guy. That's probably what you want when you're bringing together a whole bunch of new pieces here under new ownership. You want to build a strong culture. You want a guy that players will rally around and who'll get the most out of his troops. Is he visionary? Is he a Matt LaFleur? Is he somebody who's going to throw something special on the field? Maybe not. And maybe he doesn't necessarily have the coaching staff to do that. But he certainly has the nous and has the respect to pull together the organization and get it going in a very different direction to what we've seen over the last few years, which has been shambolic, to put it mildly.
No, I absolutely agree. I think this is the right selection. It's funny, the snazzy pick obviously was Ben Johnson, and you alluded to it there, and obviously he walked away because he wasn't happy with some of the pieces that were being put to him. And we touched on it a few weeks ago. Maybe that was the right decision for him to go back to Detroit, learn his trade for one more year under Dan Campbell. But I think Dan Quinn, I think you touched on it there. He seems like the kind of guy. Like, Washington has been in the doldrums for so long. They've had so many difficult seasons, maybe with the exception of one season under Ron Rivera, where they made the playoffs with that losing record. But things haven't been right off the field as much as on the field. The ownership has been really bad with Snyder. It's like a breath of fresh air that they've been able to move on. There's talk of a new stadium. And I think Dan Quinn is the right guy to come in immediately and recognise a new owner with high expectations. And I think Cliff Kingsbury is another quietly sneaky, nice addition. You bring in an offensive coordinator, who's had head coaching experience in the league. He's had his difficulties, obviously, with Arizona, but he's got the experience of working with college quarterbacks. He'll work with Jaden Daniels. And I kind of back up what Noel said. I like some of these signings. It very much strikes me as a team that recognise, we've got some young talent on the rise here, in particular on the offense with wide receivers and running backs. We also need experienced players to come in, know what it's like to get over the line and win games in tight situations in 4 quarters. Your Bobby Wagners, your Ecklers, Dante Fowler. So I think they're a sneaky team this year. I don't think they're going to necessarily make the playoffs, but they're the kind of team you strike me. Look at week 1, for example. They're going into Tampa. That for me is the kind of game that people will have no expectation for them, and they can go in, opening game for a head coach and find a way to navigate a victory with a rookie quarterback. It's not the most daunting of places to go. And that's what I see from them this year. I think we're going to see a team that aspires to play for a head coach, win games, but not necessarily make the playoffs, but certainly come December, we might be seeing a team with a brighter future than we've seen in the past in terms of what's been in Washington.
Yeah, Kieran, I kind of have to say I'm agreeing with Brian here in that I see reason for at least cautious optimism in Washington, and that hasn't been the case for a long time. Let's face it, because they brought in a lot of interesting pieces in free agency, and they had a huge amount of draft picks as well then too, particularly up the top end. I think they had 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, including Jaden Daniels, of course. Time of recording, he's been in the news because he was on the other end of Brandon Ayuk's call in a TikTok video, in which Ayuk seemed to signal that the 49ers don't want him anymore. But the Commanders very much did want Daniels. He was their guy. They've hitched their wagon too. What can we expect to see from him in 2024-25?
Well, Washington, and I'll get to Daniels in a minute, but Washington in general, Washington is one of the blue chip organizations in the NFL. When you think of the dynasties and you look back on the NFL film, movies, a lot of the coverage is of Washington semi-ball back in the day. The NFC East used to be known as the NFC Beast because they used to get so many teams in the Super Bowls and winning championships. Washington have not been relevant in probably 20 plus years now. I mean, this is an organization that had Joe Theismann slinging the ball around. And they've been crying out for decades to have some sort of stability. Dan Snyder can take a huge amount of credit for that, but also the instability with coaching and with players in general. That the quarterback room in Washington has been through some sort of carousel over even the last 5 years. I mean, you think Ryan Fitzpatrick, Colt McCoy, Case Keenum. They haven't had anything since RG3 when the great hope of RG3 came nearly 15 years ago. Jaden Daniels, I watch a lot of college football. I saw him throwing the ball to elite neighbors a lot. I'm just not convinced that he's maybe in a couple of years, but this year I'm not convinced that he's going to hit the ground running. He's very slight. He's put as 210, which is that's very generous. He was coming out of college at about 200 pounds. Standard NFL quarterback weight, you got to be around 230. And if we're talking about Josh Allen, then you're into the 240s, 250s. I don't think, unless he bulks up a huge amount in the offseason or even, the next season or two, I don't think he's built just yet for the league. He's going to get beat around a lot. That O-line is one of the bottom 5 in the NFL. They didn't do a lot to address, other than having 9 picks in the draft and basically picking somebody for every position. Their O-line is still not up to standard. Yes, they did make a lot of good free agency picks. Eckler, we talked about it. Bobby Wagner, Tyler Biadasz from the Cowboys. The problem is it's not 2018 and 2019. You're getting Austin Eckler with 200,000 miles in the car, and you're getting Bobby Wagner, who's
This almost feels, though, Kieran, like an expansion franchise, doesn't it? In a funny way, because there's so many new faces and it's all thrown together. It could actually be really exciting. Yeah, it could be tough going for the first couple of weeks, but I'm very interested to see how they assemble it all.
It could be, but I just don't see it happening that way. 4-13 last year. I don't think they're going to make much improvements this year. I think there's too many overall issues. The organization is in flux as it is. Not even get into the stadium or any of those kind of issues. I just don't think
got rid of Dan Snyder. Surely that's addition by subtraction.
That was definitely addition. However, it's not enough addition to bypass the issues that they have organizationally. And I know they did. Again, they had 9 draft picks, and they did address a lot of the issues that they had, and they did get some decent free agents. I just don't think it's enough for this year. I don't think, and Eckler won't be there by the time Daniel starts hitting the ground running in 26 or 27. As we always see with running backs, there's a sharp drop off in productivity. Think of Ezekiel Elliott last year with the Patriots. I just don't think that he's got enough weapons around him right now. I mean, Jahan Dotson and scary Terry McLaurin are probably all he has to throw to right now. I can see Washington fans being hopeful and optimistic. I just don't see it. I don't think there's enough on the D line. I don't think there's enough anywhere close on the O line to keep Daniels up. And with his slight frame, he's going to be in for a rough, circa Bryce Young 2023 getting knocked around kind of season. So cautiously, not optimistic, but not pessimistic. I'm kind of in the middle ground. I think they're just going to be treading water as they've done for the last basically 25 years. I don't see them going anywhere I don't see them making any kind of splashes. They're not thrilling. They don't have enough players that are going to catch the eye for Thursday night or Sunday night football purposes. I think they're just going to be a meh kind of team, and the best is yet to come for them for the next 4 or 5 years.
All right, we'll see whether it's game over in Landover or whether the Commanders can get it back on track once the season gets underway. That is our NFC East preview complete, though, with the Commanders. We've also got the Giants, Eagles, and Cowboys for your listening pleasure, wherever you get your podcasts. And do not forget to like or subscribe to the Irish NFL Show.